Tell me more.
Did you get very far? Summer Loving.
Yeah, I like my Summer Loving. I tell you what I'm loving. I am loving the work of Van Connor, who is the top film critic for talkRADIO and other glittering broadcast and print platforms. Van, welcome to the show.
I don't know about glittering, Mark, but I appreciate the thought. Thank you.
Yes, we're very excited to have you on the show because you are the closest we will get to an expert on this show.
That's a really low bar if I'm the peak there. Thank you, though.
We're going to now sit in respectful silence as you answer our questions. Grease, by the way, I mean, massive box office smash, a cultural event too, and a very unusual movie. I don't feel like when I first saw it I'd ever seen a movie like that. I don't feel I've seen a movie like Grease since.
It's odd to watch today, Grease. For one thing, I mean, I watched it in its entirety today for the first time in a long time. I can't remember the last time I watched it end to end, to be really honest. But the thing that struck me almost immediately is just how weird it is that
no,
movie.
It's not. Stop.
It's really bizarre.
That was Johnny.
Show to children.
It doesn't matter what the messages are. The music is insane.
No, listen, stop. Van, ignore Johnny because you're being journalistic, which is a very rare thing.
I'm a journalist, apparently.
So, Van, what you're saying is some of the sort of sexual politics are pretty wide of the mark in terms of our values now. Am I right in thinking boys being quite pushy with girls and stuff like that?
It's not even that, actually. It's a lot more overt than that. It's some of the language choices are truly bizarre for a film that we do push to... A movie that we show in the daytime.
Yeah.
It's frankly ludicrous. I mean, even the songs, even the popular songs, if you just listen to Greased Lightning alone, some of the lyrics in there are just mystifying for what we would consider a pop song.
And, of course, you know, tell me more, did you get very far? And then there's a lot of innuendo in that song, and that's pretty much about...
Did she put up a fight?
Oh, blimey. Ouch. Why has Grease, therefore, escaped the politically correct police?
I would assume it's all to do with just how much reverence we hold that film under. For I think largely the characters and the performances that are in it. And to be fair, those characters and those performances are worth the love that it garners. I mean, it's iconic for Travolta, it's iconic for Olivia Newton-John, for Stockard Channing, for Frenchie, for Kenickie, for the frankly mystifying ages of some of the cast. Because, I mean, they are meant to be teenagers and some of them just look like your uncle. It's bizarre.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, the best thing that can be said about Travolta is he did have his own hair at that point, I think.
He did indeed. And do you know what? To be fair to this is the other thing about Grease as well. It's weird that we tend to assume, for instance, that Grease came before Saturday Night Fever, when in fact it works the other way around. You can understand why that's the case, because Grease is aimed at a lot younger an audience. It's a lot more juvenile a film than, for instance, Saturday Night Fever. You would assume that he would go on to star in Saturday Night Fever, but in actuality, you know, that's the gritty film that makes his name. Then he then goes on to, you know, the more mainstream blockbuster, which is, of course, Grease. And I, to be honest with you, I've never seen Grease 2 all the way through. It's not a film that I think is really held in particularly high regard. You'd be hard pushed to find anybody who thinks Grease 2 is anywhere near in the same league as Grease 1. But yeah. I can't imagine Grease 2 being anywhere near as inappropriate at times as the first one really is.
But it's not that. It was more to do with the music. So, you know, Grease the musical, I mean, how many times have you seen a local version or a national version of Grease the musical? And there's Grease Live that got made recently with Jessie J and Vanessa Hudgens, because the songs are so iconic. Same as Mamma Mia, same as what The Greatest Showman will be when the legacy starts forming later on in life. And I think Grease just has stood the test of time, not because of the language, but because that music is so iconic, and everyone wanted to be a T-Bird. All the boys wanted to have that black leather jacket, and all the girls wanted to be a pink lady. It's iconic for that as well.
There's an interesting side. I mean, I agree with you, Johnny, first of all. Yes, there is that. Just to reiterate that point about the content of it, if you go on the BBFC ratings page for Grease and you actually access the extended ratings of it, Grease is a PG. And when you look at, for instance, the details the BBFC have noted down about some of its content, you do have to question how they have actually kept that rating all these years. I mean, under the language section alone, it simply says, mild bad language includes uses of, and there are 3 words there, 2 of which we could not say on this station right this moment in time. And we are talking about this, this is, 12:30 at night, 12:30 in the morning. We couldn't say 2 of those 3 words. And bear in mind, there are a lot more words that they've not included that I can think of off the top of my head from that movie.
How often can you change a rating though on a film? How often has that happened? Have you got any examples of where a film rating has changed with the times? Because we've obviously seen this week with 40 Towers that UK TV got rid of it, and now they're
Gone with the Wind, of course. Gone with the Wind.
Well, Gone with the Wind's gone completely, but 40 Towers they've kept, but they've put a warning sign on us. They've gone, okay, we understand you might be offended by the war episode, but we're going to still put it on there, but with a warning there. What have we seen in the film industry with that?
You tend to see that very much in the case of the late 80s and early 90s. You see it with a lot of action movies in particular. The one that I always remember, the most famous example, is the movie that invented the 12A rating, which was, of course, Spider-Man, back in 2002, because parents very simply were kicking off that they couldn't take their children to see a 12-rated film. Well, guess what? You shouldn't be able to take your children to a 12-rated film, and then we had to invent a whole new rating for that. In the case of Grease, we're not talking about something that's, a cultural attitude that's changed with the time. We are talking about outright cursing. We're talking about words that you simply would not be able to say in any polite version of the entertainment industry in the middle of the day. And yet this film is maintained as a PG.
I wonder whether the reason why it has survived the test of time and changing values is that it's quite tongue-in-cheek and it's quite caricatured, and that's why people don't take it so seriously. Do you think that's a factor?
I think so. I mean, the one I always remember, and Johnny, I think you'll be the right age for this, Johnny, to be honest. Do you remember in the late 90s when we had the Grease Megamix in the pop charts?
Oh, I listen to that Megamix now when I'm on a run. I'm not even joking. I love that Megamix way more than the actual songs.
Right, what's the lyric from Grease Lightning? You see, you wouldn't be able to legally say it out loud. What's the lyric from Grease Lightning about the appeal of their car? Think about that, and then think about how you would not...
I don't know the words.
Think how you would not say that out loud.
I know the tune. I know how to do the arm moves. I don't look into the words. I sing my own lyrics anyway.
Well, let me help you with this. Why this car is automatic, it's systematic, it's hydromatic. Why it's...
You know that I'll be bragging.
Now, Sarah's got a finger over the dump button here. We'll get some overhead lifters and some 4-barrel quads. Oh, yeah. Keep talking. Whoa, keep talking. A fuel injection cutoff and chrome-plated rods. Talk among yourselves, by the way. I'll get the money. I'm just really looking for... You are supreme. Yes. I got to the chicks.
You see it.
I got to the chicks. And it goes, you are supreme. You are supreme. The chicks all, and then become, I think, aroused for Grease Lightning is as far as I'm willing to go on national radio.
Yes, it's a very touchy one, that song. You really cannot read. You see the point
of it for me now.
But just to go back to Johnny's point as well about the appeal of the film, this is the interesting thing, because if you actually academically, I mean, Grease it's a great movie, and it's all to do with the characters and all to do with the cast, because if you start to break that film down, it starts to come apart, as we've just aptly demonstrated. There are serious issues with it. I mean, first and foremost, the film academically is not narratively a great film. It's a very episodic film. It's a film built around really great musical numbers, but when you look at it, it's quite an episodic, slapped-together film. The plot weaves in and out of various subplots that seem to come and go pretty much on a whim. At one moment, it's about a dance contest. The next moment, it's about that car race sequence between 2 rival gangs. There's this extraordinary coincidence that these 2 holiday lovers seem to, reunite. They spend an entire day at a school together without running into one another, and then it just turns out, oh look, you go to the school as well. What an extraordinary coincidence. It's a really bizarre movie.
Can I just interrupt you? Have you had a bad childhood, mate? Like, is there something you want to say? Because Grease is one of the best films ever made, and you're critiquing it way too much. You're looking way into this. Like, High School Musical, amazing film. Are you going to stop critiquing that now and say that that's a rubbish film?
It's almost like the second word of my job title is critic. Can you imagine such a thing?
Well, do movies have a shelf life for the viewer, in a sense that, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago you've enjoyed a movie and then you watch it again and you've not enjoyed it so much. So for me, for example, like, I could have a whole list of movies that have stood the test of time. Goodfellas, all the cliche ones, I'm afraid, Van. Goodfellas, The Shawshank Redemption, Star Wars.
What a lad is here.
Carry On Henry. They've all stood the test of time, right?
What a list.
A lot of comedies have survived. The Pink Panther Strikes Again, all of that stuff, fantastic. But I recently made my kids watch Vacation, and whilst I enjoyed it, it was much slower than I remembered. Do you get that with movies where they've gone from sort of hero to zero within your memory?
Well, it's funny you say specifically Vacation. Vacation is a very good example, and it does tend to happen to comedies more than any other genre. And Grease is a musical, and it's all to do with the attitudes of its time. That is aged in that regard, but it always does come down to attitudes. And in the case of comedies, I do a thing on social networks every day. We have this movie of the day thing that I do, and where I just pick a movie that I happen to love that day that's available on streaming platforms. The one I went with today was 2004's comedy Euro Trip, which I'm a big fan of. But if we look at that movie now, it has not aged well because a lot of the content in it is incredibly problematic. But a better example, and this will mortify you to go back and look at it through the prism of today's society, is American Pie. You simply could not put that film in cinemas today. It would not happen.
I literally was about to say that to you. Literally, American Pie was what I was thinking of as well.
Yeah, if you look at some of the stuff in there, I mean, a lot of the things in there are now crimes. And we actually view that as, going back to Vacation and National Lampoon's Animal House, for example. Animal House is incredibly problematic, viewed through the prism of today's society. But some of these things aren't meant to be eternally watchable. Some of them, I mean, to go with the Gone with the Wind example, some of them are meant to be viewed in a time and a place. And I don't think it's right to do what they've particularly done with Gone with the Wind, which is to pull it from that particular level of access. It's worth noting they haven't banned Gone with the Wind. They've simply taken it off that easily accessible platform. You can still view the film. They've not removed that ability from you.
Although, you know what you're going to love? I love in many ways Democracy Van, because I was looking for movies yesterday on the Apple TV platform, and Gone with the Wind was trending. So the minute you tell somebody they can't watch something, that's exactly what they want to watch.
It's very true, isn't it? I would love to see the sales figures for the In-Betweeners box sets this week, if I'm honest. I'd be very intrigued to see that.
I mean, do you think that certain movies should be removed from platforms if they, in retrospect, appear to be very un-PC? Or is it a case of, like statues, they should exist on celluloid forever so that we can understand what things were like in the past?
In a perfect world, I think everything should be left available to everyone 24 hours a day, all the time. I don't personally believe in censorship as a general rule. I do think that people should be left to have the intellect and the intelligence to make these decisions and get informed for themselves. But I do understand that, you know, a person is smart, people are idiots. That's the Men in Black rule. And to be honest, that's what I tend to stick to. You can trust a person to behave calmly and rationally. You cannot trust a group of people to stay that way and to not resort to basis, ridiculous mob mentality. It's just how I feel about it. As far as certain issues with censorship and what is and isn't appropriate this week goes, I do understand that some things are a little bit more complex, a lot more volatile at present.
Indeed. The Bonds, certainly the early Bonds with Sean Connery, I was watching Thunderball the other day. That was very problematic. There's that classic Hollywood trope of the guy grabs the woman, she hates him, he hates her, he then forces his mouth onto hers, she recoils in horror and then thinks about it for a second and comes back for more, you know, and then later in that movie he sort of manhandles her slightly, and in order to get his message across, you know, all of that's very unedifying to watch now. And I was watching it with my son and I'm like, dude, this isn't cool, that was the old days. And he's like, yeah, I know, I got it, you know what I mean? But I wonder whether there's an argument for editing some of these moments out of movies. Is that a solution, just to get back and cut out the vile stuff?
I don't think going all George Lucas on everything is really a solution to any kind of a problem. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the version of E.T. where they've edited out all the guns and replaced them with walkie-talkies. It just looks ludicrous. Yeah. And especially if you look at a film like Grease, I don't think you could edit Grease down in any way. I mean, it's worth noting, actually, that Grease is edited after the fact to remove Coca-Cola logos, purely because they signed a sponsorship deal with Pepsi after they'd filmed the thing, and to reshoot it would have been cost prohibitive. There are things like that in Grease, and also if you look at, for instance, the knife element throughout the film, which is very, very strange. They just seem to keep whipping out knives, on a whim here and there and everywhere. I don't think you could particularly edit that and keep it in any way, keep the plot as it is. It's kind of integral to who those characters are. I mean, even down to the fact that one of them has the silly plastic water gun.
Well, now we will, with the clock against us, Van, it's lovely to have you on the show and your expertise. Obviously, Grease is a movie musical, and there have been some great movie musicals and some pretty awful ones. If you look at some of the high points, Annie, a chorus line would certainly do it. Singing in the Rain, an absolute classic, of course.
High School Musical 1,
2, 3, and 4.
Good Lord.
You've also got Moulin Rouge, Mary Poppins, of course, because it's easy to forget, that Mary Poppins is a musical, West Side Story, out and out, Sound of Music. So what would you say have been the best and worst of the movie musicals? Because it's no mean feat to create a hit West End show or Broadway show and turn it into a movie. They don't always get it right.
I mean, I can tell you without even putting any kind of level of thought into it whatsoever, because I don't need to, the worst musical of all time is also one of the worst movies of all time, and that's, of course, Cats, which came out quite recently.
Yes.
In terms of the best, I can say that one of my favourites of recent years was The Greatest Showman. I think that movie's absolutely terrific. I think
hated by the critics. Hated by the critics, right?
It was. A lot of critics, though, have gone back and revised that opinion. I remember the National Press show for The Greatest Showman. I remember there was myself and Linda Marek from the Jewish Chronicle, I think, were the only two critics to come out of that film beaming, dancing and jumping around singing. A lot of critics did go back after that Christmas season and say, actually, we jumped the gun on this. Audiences seemed to love it. We listened to them. We went back. We looked. Yes, there is something to this.
But the problem with that,
slow burn.
Yeah, I was going to say, the fact is it was a slow burn, and it's one of those films that you had to understand and learn the music before you could enjoy the film. So the story and the plot line is awful, but when you know the songs, it gets you going that you want to be singing it, because those songs were so well written and those harmonies were brilliant, and they were very Tin Pan Alley style where you could sing along, and that was the point of The Greatest Showman. So if you first watched it and were like, oh, I don't really know what this is, you go away, you learn the songs, you're like, okay, this is everywhere now I want to be part of this extravaganza.
Actually, I will give you this, Johnny, because this is something you'll appreciate. Of all the songs, because obviously with The Greatest Showman, This Is Me is what got put forward for the Oscar for Best Original Song. Which do you think was the song from Grease that got put forward for the Oscar in the late 70s for Best Song?
Born to Hand Drive.
It's not. It was, is it Hopelessly Devoted to You? I think that's the song.
Cheesy ballad. They always go for the cheesy ballad. They chose, Can You Feel the Love Tonight over Circle of Life for Lion King, which was a travesty.
Exactly. I mean, you think of all the songs from Grease, all the ones that you know by heart, that without even, as soon as you hear the backing track, you can just start singing along impulsively too. It's weird to me that is, especially when you watch the film, you think, this is the Oscar song out, not You're the One That I Want, not Summer.
Not We Go Together, that has all the weird words that you don't really understand what Wibbly Wum means.
No.
Yes, well,
exactly. Yeah.
The Hollywood folklore, the number of extraordinary moments in movie history when a director has really put their foot down about a particular scene or a particular song going into a movie, and you're like, how could they even have thought for a nanosecond that shouldn't be in there? And a really good example is Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which was removed temporarily by the studio in Wizard of Oz, and the director, whose name escapes me, and you'll know it, Van, said, if you take Somewhere Over the Rainbow out of that movie, you can take my name off the credits. And he really put his foot down. He's like, can you imagine the Wizard of Oz without that song?
Oh, absolutely not. No, it's one of those iconic moments. But again, it's the same kind of thing. It's like taking This Is Me out of The Greatest Showman. You're basically pulling the rug out from under what is sort of an iconic thing. Victor Fleming, by the way, is who you're thinking of as the director.
Oh, God bless you for that.
And Wicked, Defying Gravity. Wicked won't be Wicked without Defying Gravity. Just want to say
yes,
that.
Yes, and where's the feature adaptation of that? Because that's been a long time in the works.
Now, ultimately, there is a snobbery, isn't there, about movie musicals, but box office-wise, they do serious business, and of late, they have started winning awards. If I think of La La Land, that was obviously, commercially very successful, and then completely cleaned up at the Oscars. So do you think that movie musicals now get the respect they deserve?
I do. I think there was an interesting thing. La La Land, if I remember correctly, was touted as being the first original Hollywood musical for 20 years, I believe, because they do tend to be adaptations of Broadway shows. They tend to be adaptations of West End shows. They do tend to have an existing fan base. I mean, I say that knowing full well that they're the only people in the universe who can claim to stomach Cats. But I remember that La La Land and The Greatest Showman being original musicals actually was a big deal. High School Musical, for instance, is an original musical. I'm not sure why that didn't count under the first original marker. There is a reason for it. It escapes me at this moment in time.
Johnny, go on.
I was just going to ask, have you seen the TV spin-off of High School Musicals? I don't know.
Yeah, it was awful. Don't watch it. That's my advice.
Don't watch it.
A question for you, Van. We've seen in the recent years, films like Rocket Man and Yesterday and The Lights on Blinding Lights, Bohemian Rhapsody. All these great films based on singers. Where are we going with that? Is this going to be a new trend now that this is all we're going to get? And if so, when can I see the S Club 7 movie that's not LA7?
Look, if there's an S Club 7 biopic, I'll be honest with you. First of all, I have all the time in the world for that. Second of all, whoever they cast as Hannah Spear is not going to be good enough. I'll tell you that straight off the bat. I'm going to have serious issues with whoever they cast as Hannah Spear because no one will ever reach my exacting standards. To answer your actual question, that's a good song.
Go on, bring it back.
Party. Oh, clever. Right, so as far as the biopic thing goes, the ball has already started rolling on the Aretha Franklin biopic, Respect.
Right.
So with Jennifer Hudson, we've got that to come. We've got the Bowie biopic starring Johnny Flynn. That's going to come. That's coming down the pipe as well. Prince is getting a biopic somewhere down the line. This is going to become a thing. And the fact that both Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody have garnered all the acclaim that they have, that's only going to spur them on more. We are going to see a lot of these in the years to come now.
Now, Van, final question. The Sun TV Mag this weekend are looking at underrated classics you simply must see. They're offering Eyes Wide Shut, which, let's be honest, is very long, but we've all got time on our hands. Frankie and Johnny, starring Michelle Pfeiffer. Casino, an underrated Scorsese classic. And The Night of the Hunter, 1955, very dark film, starring Robert Mitchum. For lockdown, if there's one movie we should all watch, we may have heard of it, we may not have heard of it, but if you could just choose one last movie to watch in lockdown, what might it be?
That's a very easy one. Snowpiercer. Everyone go and watch Snowpiercer. I told you all for 7 years to watch Snowpiercer.
And no one
Nobody listened. And then you know what happened? Guy went and won an Oscar. Who knew?
Snowpiercer. Now, this is basically like Mark Commode has got The Exorcist and you've got Snowpiercer. Is that it?
That is it. Snowpiercer is my Kermode's Exorcist. That's all it is. It's George Orwell on a train. I mean, you just look at that cast list and you tell me that that's not a film that deserves to be seen. That movie is insane.
And if you like George Orwell, obviously his brilliant book, 1974, one of the fours, was made into Big Brother. Big Brother's Best Bits starts tomorrow night on E4 at 9 p.m.
Oh dear. Stick with Snowpiercer. I am delighted to have enjoyed your company. Let's do it again really soon, Van. Thanks for joining us.
A pleasure, Mark. Thank you.
The fabulous, talented, wise, intelligent. In fact, I don't know how we follow that, to be quite honest with you, Johnny.
Well, the fact that he doesn't like High School Musical says a lot.
I think we should play records for the rest of the show. Van, Connor, thank you so much. After this, we're putting Johnny on a diet.